Now we're going to talk about sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are rocks that form from sediment, and sediment are the little tiny pieces of old rock that have been weathered and eroded away, and then somewhere drop. So it starts with the sediment, tiny pieces of rock and minerals, sand grains, pebbles that are weathered and eroded from a previous rock. And that sediment material is going to be deposited or placed somewhere. Once that sediment is placed somewhere over long periods of time, two processes could happen: compaction or cementation. And a lot of times it can be a combination of both, but those are the two different processes that take place to form a sedimentary rock. So let's talk about those. Compaction. And compaction is pretty much what the word says. We're talking about compacting or pushing different layers together. So we have these layers of sediment that build up and build up and build up gradually over a long period of time. The weight from the upper layers are pushing down the bottom layers, and this pressure ends up compacting the sediment together, and it forms a rock over long periods of time. Cementation, on the other hand, I think about it like cement or glue. This is when minerals within the sediment dissolve in water, and that water can come from streams and lakes, or most of the time precipitation. So the minerals that are already in the sediment are dissolved in that precipitation, and it starts to form a glue or a cement-like material. And then it trickles on down through all of the sediment, and the sediment starts to stick together. So let's take a look at a brief diagram of this happening. So you can see here I already have some dots on my screen, and I'm using those to represent different types of sediment. So I have some red sediment. I'm looking at the left here. Some red sediment, some blue sediment, and green sediment. Doesn't really matter. They're just different types of sediment. So with compaction, what is happening is over time I have so many layers that are building up that these upper layers are forming pressure that are pushing down, pushing down, pushing down, which will compact these different layers of sediment and end up turning it into a rock. That's compaction. Cementation, on the other hand, let's just write pressure here. Cementation, on the other hand, over here, I still have my different types of sediment, but let's say it's raining over time and water starts to trickle down through all of this sediment, and it starts to pull out the minerals in it and form it into like a glue or a cement type substance. And that material starts to bond all of that sediment together, and that forms a sedimentary rock. A lot of times in cemented sedimentary rocks, so sedimentary rocks formed by cementation, you have really big chunks of different pieces of material. So let's go back to our notes here. So those are the two ways a sedimentary rock can form, by compaction and cementation. Sometimes during those processes, most of the time during compaction, the sediment is building up over many, many years, and after it's forming into a rock, you start to see the layers, and those are the layers of the sediment. So we call this strata. I referenced this in the metamorphic video. Keep in mind that strata is very different than foliation. Strata is when the sediment is in line during compaction. Foliation is when your actual mineral grains are lining up. So this is a little bit different. The next thing to talk about with sedimentary rock is the way that we can classify them. And we have three different groups here. A clastic sedimentary rock is when you have big pieces of broken fragments that are basically stuck together. And this is what I was talking about during cementation. A clastic sedimentary rock is common during cementation because you just have all of these pieces and it looks like they're just kind of stuck together. An organic sedimentary rock is a rock that forms from remains of living things. So a good example of this is limestone. A lot of limestone here in Indiana has different fossils in it. So anytime you have fossils or remains of living things in a sedimentary rock, we would consider it organic. And then a chemical sedimentary rock is when our minerals crystallize in dissolved water. So that's the process that they're forming. Here are some examples. Clastic sedimentary rocks. So you can see the big chunks of almost like pebbles and pieces that are stuck in them. We will see some of these in the lab. Organic. Okay, here's limestone with some of your fossils in it. And I believe this is coal. And then a chemical sedimentary rock. Rock salt is an example. Let's watch our small piece of the brain pop about sedimentary rocks.
So kind of sedimentary. Okay, how did we get here? Oh, those are sedimentary rocks. They're made from bits of eroded rock, mineral grains, and plant and animal remains that have been pressed together over time. Lots of times, sedimentary rocks form from the remains of other rocks. The layers are important because the oldest rock is at the bottom. True, if you were to dig in and upset the layers, some old rock pieces might be overturned and moved to the surface. What are you doing? We'd better get going. Moby?